So you're thinking about moving to Murfreesboro? Well, in this video, we're gonna cover everything you need to know about Murfreesboro. We're gonna talk about the good and the bad, or the pro and the con, so you can get a good idea about what you can expect about moving to Murfreesboro, so at least you can make a well-informed decision if you would consider moving to Murfreesboro. So that being said, we're getting after it right now. If this is your first time to this channel and you want to know everything there is about living in Nashville or surrounding areas like Murfreesboro, then hit the subscribe button, tap the bell for notification so you can be the first to know about the current market in Nashville. My name is Indro, and my partner Chloe and I, we get daily calls from people like you who are looking to make their move to Nashville, and we absolutely love it. So whether you're moving in 9 days or 90 days, just give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email. Happy to help you make that smooth move to Nashville. So as I mentioned today, we're going to talk about Murfreesboro. We're going to talk about the good and the bad, or the pro and the con, so you know at least up front what you can expect if you would consider moving down to Murfreesboro. And that being said, let's just start off with the, let's say, the bad stuff, because nobody likes the bad stuff. So we're going to start with that first, and it brings me to con number one, which is traffic. And this is an issue for Murfreesboro, as it's one of the fastest growing cities in Tennessee. Of course, it attracts a lot of new people, new residents, and the problem is with that, like the infrastructure in Murfreesboro, they cannot handle all that traffic. So there's actually one main road, which is the I-24, that leads from or that goes from Murfreesboro to Nashville. And so if you would work or you would have a job in Nashville, like, consider a 45-minute commute minimum, especially around rush hour. It can practically go up to an hour and a half, and maybe worst case scenario, if there's like any kind of like traffic accident on I-24, it can even go up to 2 hours. So that's definitely one thing you have to know about Murfreesboro. And even in Murfreesboro itself, like the city itself, like there's like one road, which is Medical Center Parkway, where all the restaurants are located, the shopping malls. That's practically the entire day pretty congested. So you definitely want to avoid that area during rush hour, because nobody likes to get stuck in traffic.
Luckily, with the Murfreesboro government, they have been very proactive about fixing the infrastructure to help fit the amount of people that are moving in.
So that's a good thing. At least they are aware of the fact that the infrastructure cannot handle all that traffic, so they're trying to do something about it at least.
Let's talk about con number two. It's the weather. So in the summer, it gets pretty hot, usually in the 90s, and it can go up to the high 100s. A big difference that I've noticed with the heat down here versus everywhere else is that it is very humid, so it kind of feels like a wet blanket.
Yeah, definitely. And that is the one thing that I agree. I come from Europe, from Belgium, where I'm like used to like cold, rainy days. So I probably will never get used to those humid, hot days. But still, it's better to have a summer with sun instead of like having a summer with rain.
It gets easier.
Absolutely. So then the other thing about the weather is January and February are like the coldest months, and that's where you also have like the highest chance of getting some kind of snow here in Tennessee. And the one thing which I've noticed here in Tennessee in the South is like people like easily start to panic when they see some snow. Even if it's like 1 or 2 inches of snow, like they do intend to like shut down the schools, shut down all the grocery stores, all the other shops, where like literally even if it's 1 or 2 inches of snow. So that's something you got to know. And here in Murfreesboro, they got like 13 built-in snow days. So even though the winters are getting milder, they still like to use those days.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, because we're not very used to snow days, there's a lot of ice on the roads, which is why they usually shut everything down, because we're just not used to getting them and we don't have the equipment to handle them like somewhere in the north would have. So that is a pretty big con.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing to keep in mind is that usually in like March and April, it can go from being like 90 degrees down to a full-blown snow day in a matter of like a couple hours. So it's very hot and cold in the springtime. much more than other places. So, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that I noticed as well. It could be like one day just like 70 degrees, nice and sunny, and the other day it could be like literally like 20 degrees and like rainy or snow even. So another thing we should like talk about is at least we can have pretty severe weather sometimes here, and that's what I've noticed. Like it can be a couple of like nice sunny days, but then there's always like one day where it like literally like rains and it literally pours down on you. So when it rains here in Tennessee, it literally like rains heavily. And one thing you need to be aware of at least is that if you would buy a home in Murfreesboro or in Tennessee in general, is just to make sure that it's not in the floodplain. When there's like a heavy rain, it does easily get flooded here in Tennessee.
And on top of that, with the floodplain, if you were to buy a home in a floodplain, then you're looking at higher insurance rates on that too. So it is pretty important to keep in mind when you're buying a home.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, compare with those heavy rain days, and they're not that often, but they are there. It usually goes compare with some kind of like storm weather, like lightning and thunder. And another important thing, of course, in Tennessee, which you got to know, is there are tornadoes. I've never personally experienced a tornado, or I've never been in one, but I know that in March 2020, probably as you all know, there was like one tornado that went from Nashville to Putnam County and did some severe damage. And even now, December 2021, we had a tornado that went through Middle Tennessee and did some serious damage as well. So, you know, that was something, especially if you're not used to it. Like I still remember the first day when I was here and I heard the alarm going off, the tornado alarm in the middle of the night. It is pretty scary. I'm not gonna lie about it. But like I said, I've never experienced it, a tornado myself, but there's still a threat. There's a tornado alarm, and there's still a tornado threat in Tennessee in general, so that's something you gotta be aware of.
Yeah, we're not technically in Tornado Valley, but from what I've heard, it's kind of expanding over this way. So we kind of treat it like it's Tornado Valley, but luckily with that, we have the right systems in place to be able to handle that. So you'll never have to worry about experiencing a tornado or severe weather without the proper warning system. So you'll always hear sirens going off, which is nice. We'll move on to con number 3. It's bugs. So we have a lot of bugs here in the South. I'm used to it because I was born and raised in the South. I don't know if you are. We have a lot of mosquitoes, we have chiggers, a lot of ticks.
I remember still the day that I got here and people were like telling me like, you gotta be careful, or you gotta watch out for chiggers. And I was like, what the hell is a chigger? Like I've never heard about chiggers at all. But indeed, like you definitely don't want to get bit by those because it can be, I mean, I've not experienced it so far, but apparently from what I've heard, it can be pretty painful. And
you get like some nail polish on it.
And you get some like red bumps on your skin. But in any case, I'm not a huge fan of mosquitoes anyway as well. So that's really like something you have to deal with. And what a lot of people do over here is like they get pest control, which could be an option, of course. But you know, one thing you got to know at least when you come to the South, there are gonna be bugs no matter where you are.
And obviously we also have bees and a lot of wasps. We have red ants, regular ants. I just had a flying ant land on me just now. So yeah, we have a lot of bugs.
Cool.
I think I just had another one land on me.
So which brings us to our last point, or the last con, which is the sales tax. So as you might know or not, but the sales tax here in Murfreesboro is 9.75%, which is of course higher than the national average sales tax, which is 7.30%. Now, you might think that's bad, but where I come from, like we have a sales tax which is 21%, so it can always get worse.
Wow.
But that being said, which brings us to our very first positive point, or first pro, which is there is no state income tax. So if you are a high earner, you will bring more money back home. So, which is a good thing. And I think it's like we are one of the 7 states that don't have a state income tax. So that's definitely a huge plus if you have a higher sales tax. Let's talk about our second pro, or second positive thing about Murfreesboro, is that it's a great place to raise families. And Murfreesboro has so much to offer. Like you can do so many stuff in Murfreesboro. I think there are like 3 shopping malls. There are like so many restaurants. They have a climbing center. They got bowling alleys. They got a huge amount of parks. If you're like an outdoorsy type of person, you're even pretty close to Percy Priest Lake. So if you're like into boating or like fishing or anything like that, it's relatively close as well. And another great thing what they're going to do right now to Murfreesboro is they're going to build in 2024, or that's when the opening is expected, a huge sports park, which is about 250 acres plus park, which has like baseball courts, it has like soccer fields, multiple use fields, pickleball courts.
Yeah. They're even going to have a place for cheerleading. They're going to have a dance studio, esports.
Yeah, I mean, they just have so many cool features in that sports park. So that is definitely a huge plus for Murfreesboro. And it's going to be located on the city limits.
Another plus to Murfreesboro is that it has a really good hospital. It's got a St. Thomas, and then it also has a VA hospital.
If you need any type of medical care, at least, you don't have to drive far. It's literally in Murfreesboro.
Yeah.
Another great thing to raise your family, of course, is that Murfreesboro has one of the best schools in the entire state. According to niche.com, like the schools go from an A- rating to an A+ rating. So that's definitely a really benefit for Murfreesboro, or at least if you want to live in Murfreesboro. They got some excellent schools. They even have a local university there, which is the Middle Tennessee State University.
MTSU actually has one of the top pilot programs in the country, so it's becoming a little more competitive as it grows. So the fourth pro about Murfreesboro is the economic and job growth. So as of March 2022, it actually has an unemployment rate of 2.3%, which is way lower than the national average.
If you look at the projected job growth in Murfreesboro, it has a projected rate of 56.6%, which is of course really great. And that's the thing with Murfreesboro, of course. It's such a fast-growing city, but the positive thing is that it creates a lot of job opportunities as well. And there's definitely an economic growth in Murfreesboro going on right now.
Yeah, and with MTSU being the second largest employer in Murfreesboro, as that school grows, the employment will also grow with Murfreesboro.
All right, so just let us talk about the last pro, which was actually one of the cons, but I definitely see it as a plus as well, because even if you look just behind us, if you look what a nice, beautiful day it is, the weather is really, for me at least, a pro as well. Definitely around spring and fall, where like the temperature is like around the 70s, just like not too warm, not too cold, nice sunny day, especially in the fall when leaves are changing color. That's just, so beautiful and so nice. And if you know that I come from a place where literally from November till I would say April, mostly it's just cold, overcasted, rainy. I am so lucky, and I feel so blessed to be in Tennessee, where you get a lot of these nice sunny days. Yeah. Even though we got, some rainy days, some storm weather, but at least you got the 4 seasons, and you got really nice, beautiful weather at least during the fall, spring, and even summer. It can be maybe humid, but it's still better than having rain.
Right. I think fall is probably one of my favorite times of the year. It's like a sea of orange and red. It's beautiful in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing which is also typical, as you can see, for Tennessee, we're just surrounded with so many nice trees. Like everywhere you go, you see trees, and that's just like creates a beautiful scenery definitely in the fall. This kind of like wraps it up about the pro and the cons about Murfreesboro. So at least you kind of like have an idea about what you can expect, at least if you would consider moving down to Murfreesboro. So that being said, hopefully until next time, and hopefully to see you around town.
Bye, see you next time.